National Comics Rose and Thorn #1, written by Tom Taylor, art by Neil Googe. This is like a weird Jekyll Hyde thing going on. It gets more explained later on. So we open up with a dream sequence where Rose thinks she hears somebody screaming. She can't tell what it is, but she thinks it's herself. And then all of a sudden she shoots up out of bed. And it's a very girly bedroom. And she's like, oh, geez, I fell asleep in my clothes. Well, I'm usually sleep in my very girly pajamas. Also, my back is killing me. And she's being called down for breakfast by her aunt downstairs because her parents are both deceased. And when she pulls off the cover, she sees that she's coated in blood. She screams, blames it on a spider, and then immediately goes to wash off the blood and discovers, oh, wait, this isn't my blood. That's not better. So at that point, the water hits her lower back, and she feels that pain again. She sees that there's a gauze pad on it, and when she peels it off, there's a tattoo underneath of a rose that has a little like label around it that says Thorn. And she's like, what in the hell do I have? 16 years old. Why do I have a tattoo? So the aunt's still calling, saying you got to come down. She's freaking out, and she's like, I can't remember anything like last night. And also I have these huge blackouts from like my childhood before my dad died. There's so much here. But she goes downstairs and she talks to her aunt, and her aunt's like, hey, you were out pretty late last night. And she's like, yeah, I mean, stuff. And she's like, hey, I get it. New school. You just got back from the institution. Peer pressures probably telling you got to hang out after school. But hey, just do whatever you think is right. And she's a very chill aunt. So anyway, she gets into school, and one of the popular girls steps up called Sky, and she's like, hey, Rose, we had a great time last night. I didn't know you were so absolutely, like, I guess trashy is the best way to put it. Like, they say it last night, but, like, she is full on, like, this popular girl saying, like, you basically made out with my ex-boyfriend in front of me. You did horrible things. Like, you were drinking uncontrollably, and you went by the name Thorn, so that was weird. But this whole time, Rose is like apologizing, like, I'm sorry, I didn't. But apparently, the ex-boyfriend didn't show back up to school the next day. She's like, oh crap, is that his blood? Is that Troy's blood? And so she tries to get Troy's number. The Sky just gives it to her, like, no problem, and he doesn't pick up immediately. But then we see her friend. I can't remember her name at the moment. Her friend, who's actually like her friend as she's Rose, comes up and is just like, hey, why are you talking to popular girl? Like, that's unusual. And she's like, yeah, I don't know. Something happened. Anyway, so they've got a science class where they're going to be dissecting frogs. And one of the popular girls sitting in front of Rose pulls up a picture on her phone of Rose making out with Troy. And she's like, that was me? What the? I don't remember. I posted that? And at that point, she sees in big old scrawled letters the word mine written over the chest of the frog, which causes her to pass out. She wakes up, and by the way, the friend's name is Melinda. She wakes up, and Melinda takes her back to the nurse. But before they make it to the nurse, Rose stops by her locker, pulls out her stuff, and she's like, I'm just going to leave school for the day. I've got some stuff I need to take care of. And Melinda's like, hey, about last night, I know I left early, but I was kind of just surprised when you tried to kiss me. But, I've had time to think of it, and I'm totally not against it if you want it to happen again. And Rose is like, okay, so, yeah, thanks, Melinda, bye. So now she's got that on her plate as well. So she keeps on trying to call Troy. It ain't going through. She gets a taxi to go to Troy's place, and she gets a Facebook invite seemingly from herself, but from a profile named Thorn, and it says, hey Rose, let's be friends. So she checks out Thorn's profile, and she sees all the crazy things she did the night before, until finally she gets to Troy's house, where she has like little glimpses of memories of her getting a tattoo from Troy's dad on the kitchen table, and apparently that was after Troy left. So then she starts flirting with the dad and starts making out with him. And then all of a sudden, the dad comes in through the room. He's like, "Oh, Rose, what are you doing back?" And she's like, "Oh, sorry, the door was open." And he's like, "Look, whatever you do, just I'll get you the names. Just don't hurt me anymore." And we see that big letter "mine" was actually carved into the chest of the dad, and she has a memory of Thorn doing it as he's like tied up naked on a chair, and Thorn's just taunting him for thinking that he was going to get with a high schooler. And she's using that as blackmail against him so that he's getting some sort of list of names for him or for Thorn, but Rose has no idea of what, and she just immediately like runs out of the house because she has no clue what's happening here. Finally, she gets back on her computer with new messages from Rose, and she just woke up after a blackout, so all of these are coming from Thorn. And she sees all the pictures from Troy's dad thing. And then Thorn actually left a video message for Rose that basically lays out the plot of, if this were a series, what would it be? And Troy's dad was apparently in on whatever happened to Rose's father. And Thorn keeps on pushing her, like, you got to remember, it's still there, you need to remember it. And she ends up remembering when she was a kid, the screaming she was remembered for was that her dad like was tickling her and was like picking her up, throwing her on his shoulders. And she's like, why were you yelling with that man? And he's like, oh, sometimes adults disagree. But then shortly after that, he ended up dying. So Thorn believes that that group, whoever it was, had something to do with their father's death, and she's going to get to the bottom of it. And she's asking Rose whether or not she's in. She doesn't have to do anything, but she can't stand in the way. And at this point, Troy shows up, and he's apparently fine. And it's like, oh, sorry, I would have gotten in contact with you, but my phone was dead. By the way, what's that on your computer? And Rose closes the lid just enough that he can't see. And it's just like, oh, nothing. It's good to see you, Troy. And we see on the screen that Rose agrees that she's going to help Thorn get to the bottom of her father's death. And that's the series. Okay, yeah, I mean, it's very dense. I liked where it went. Art-wise, I do have to point out, this is very cartoonish. Like, it has a very cartoony style to it, but the layouts give it this kind of like cinematic feel to it. Like, you can feel this was like a storyboard almost of how it was laying out. I liked it. I think it was very well written, and the art, it took me some time to get used to, but it works. I do think it works for this particular feel for it. And I could tell the difference in each panel between Rose and Thorn. So that's an strategy to its own right of trying to get that right. Overall, enjoyable. Maybe not great. Definitely not one-shot worthy. I think it needed to be like a mini in order to tell the whole story. Like, I didn't feel like I got a full serving out of this particular issue, but if this were like a pilot for something bigger coming up, I definitely would have wanted to see more of it. So overall, I'd say this is probably a 7. Doesn't really stand up on its own, but the concepts are there, and I like how it was written. So I would have loved to see more of this. Unfortunately, I do believe this is the only one, but hey, Tom Taylor keeps showing up, so that's a plus.